As often is the case, we don't have endless time to explain every detail and every science study and all the information that we'd like to impart. And here we also have run out of time. If you could each just close with whatever thoughts you want to leave us with regarding any of this information. I'm very grateful to all of you for the work you do, for the books that you've written, for the lectures you give. But for someone out there who's not necessarily familiar with this and might be watching you on video someday, how would you like to close? Would you each take a few moments and say whatever final thoughts you think you'd like to summarize where you're at with all of this and what you'd like to say to someone who might be listening who does not necessarily have as much of a commitment or a background or knowledge about these subjects. So each of you could just take a minute or two to close.
So I'm going to make a case for focusing on GMOs as part of your world leadership. We are at a very critical time right now. As I explained today, the GMO issue may be one of the greatest health and environmental catastrophes we face. As if you look at longevity, genes, including the gene pool, can outlast easily the effects of global warming and nuclear waste. The only thing that lasts longer is extinction. And we are at a time now where the biotech industry is actually feeling up against the wall and pulling out all the stops. But they are up against the wall. People come up to me all the time and say, this whole issue is exploding, and you may see it in your inbox, you may see it in your Facebook page, but it is exploding. Now, it is at the time of transformation when input determines the outcome and the steady state. So if there's a phase transition going on, the information that goes on during the phase transition determines the height of the final curve. In other words, in plain language, this is the time to be involved. You have far more capacity to make changes now with GMOs than any time in the past and possibly any time in the future. The irony, the weirdness is, as we said before, this massive problem may go away if sales of Cheerios goes up because it's non-GMO. And that would make everyone realize, oh, we have to be non-GMO. It's that simple. It is so leveraged. A small percentage of eaters simply need to say no to GMOs. And 53% of Americans say they want to avoid GMOs if labeled, so most people are on our side. So if we only need a small percentage, and most Americans are on our side, we can get rid of GMOs without ever having to convince anyone who's resistant. We give the information to the people who want to hear. And because it is lively in collective consciousness, it's lively in social media, it's lively even in the mainstream media right now, people are more willing to hear the answer, to find out what's going on. So the amplification of every single statement and action related to GMOs is unprecedented. But so too is the necessity. All future generations hang in the balance. Are we going to replace nature with Monsanto's designer organisms, or are we going to protect nature? And so I encourage you to treat this extremely seriously, to take this as precious, a precious opportunity. And I'll end with this. Someone said to me in Taiwan 2 years ago, "Thank you, Mr. Smith, for your bravery." I said, actually, I don't consider myself brave. I define bravery as seeing fear, being fearful, and stepping through it. But I have no fear to do this work. I have an opportunity that is unprecedented in the history of mankind. None of our ancestors have ever had the ability to help protect everyone who eats and all living beings for all future generations, because there's never been a technology that threatened everyone who eats all living beings and all future generations. No one in the past could put it on their resume. We have the opportunity to together protect all who eat, all living beings, and all future generations. What an opportunity we have as human beings for the first time in human history. So to me, it's not a question of bravery. It's a question, I am honored to do this work. And I will speak on behalf of all of the GMO activists I've been working with for 17, 18 years. As we support and celebrate nature, it feels directly like nature is celebrating and supporting us at the same time.
Good for you. Yeah. Yeah, that was very well said, don't you think? Yeah. You know, very quickly, when I began my journey in the direction of seeking truth and reality, and in terms of peace and health, and how food affects all of us, and how it affects the world that we live in, it was back in the early 70s. And you know, I think that things have changed so greatly since then in a number of ways. You know, I spoke mostly about some very discouraging things today. My book is replete with very discouraging things, but what I don't want you to take away from my involvement, which I was so honored to be here, is that I want you to find encouragement in what I presented anyway, and in the sense that the way that I found encouragement in the last, I've always been encouraged, but especially in the last 10 to 15 years, where at the same time, it's interesting how that works, isn't it? At the same time that one could feel as disparaged as ever in the history of our planet, with how much devastation there is around us, and our contribution to all of that as a species, but at the same time that's occurring, we and somewhat to echo what Jeffrey had said, that we've never really had a better time as humans, as individuals, and collectively to take a movement and do anything greater than to save our planet and save our world. And but again, and what I had said a few times earlier today is that not for ourselves so much, but for all other species on Earth and for all future generations. In fact, in the midst of all this discouragement that I've mentioned, I want you to not only be focused on timelines, because we need to start looking outside of ourselves and outside of the microcosm in front of us, start looking at some of the, realizing and appreciating these timelines that we're on, because they're very real, and they're very narrowed. And once we run through those, I mean, we're doing some irreversible damage to our planet right now, and that can be understated at all. And we are responsible, but at the same time, we can still create the movement. We can all be essentially the superheroes that I mentioned today earlier, superheroes and super stewards, and that's our job to do so, and it's our job to lead all those around us on that same path. So I want to applaud all of you for being here and for your involvement in this journey towards health and peace. So thank you.
I am here to tell you that because of technology, when it's used wisely, we are going to break down boundaries, borders, nationalities, and we're going to unify humanity over the next 10 to 20 years. My whole life I've gotten to rooms, and if I've had 1,000 people there to listen to me, that was a heyday. Now I can get on the internet as we're doing here. Many of you are listening to us today or 25 years from now and reach millions and billions of people worldwide. If we start to use this technology wisely and tell the truth, unwavering truth, without fear. And I loved what Jeffrey said. If you have no fear, you're not brave. And nobody should ever fear, you included, every one of you listening, the truth. Number two, I'm absolutely sure the destiny of humanity is to come back to normality. The destiny of humanity is to come back to normality. And it will happen in great part over the next 10 years. And some of the suggestions, Dr. Oppenlander said, yes, it may not in the next 100 years be your neighbor who likes to shoot deer that are going to change. But let's hold them accountable for that. Not in the way that they would hold the deer accountable, but in a loving way, in a compassionate way. And understand that not everyone, including me and every one of the panelists here, knew what we know now and could have called ourselves conscious before we went on this journey. So let's have the same compassion for them, understanding that all of us are in the process of learning more. None of us have it all figured out yet. And lastly, the most important thing is that you have got to take the energy in your mind, your heart, your soul, your consciousness, and put it to good use. Do not dwindle it away and waste it by worrying. What's going to happen? Who cares what's going to happen? You know, who cares what's going to happen? What's going to happen is what you make happen. You're in total control. Your whole life, for centuries, they've been trying to take that away from you. But you're in total control. I'll go back to what I said earlier. I've never seen any movement that mattered. I've never seen anything important ever happen that it hasn't been one person. You. Let's picture you. Not me, not we the leaders, not the truth about health. You that made that commitment will make the change. It's a ripple effect that becomes a tidal wave, that becomes a tsunami, and 30 years from now, people are going to be saying, you mean to tell me people ate meat and dairy food? You mean to tell me people got under an animal that wasn't of their species and drank from its breast? You mean to tell me we robbed little eggs from a chicken? You mean to tell me that we literally thought we were so smart that we could outdo nature and evolution for billions of years, and we genetically modified food for somebody's profit? One company or two companies' profit? You mean to tell me that when people were sick, we never once asked for the cause of why you got sick? We just had the remedy, and the remedy was worse than the cause? You mean to tell me this? And when you really look at what is normal today, it's got to be laughable. Because if you don't laugh, you'll cry. You'll cry 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, saying, how could we have gotten this crazy? So laugh. Have fun. Enjoy. You're okay. God's here. Everything's going to be fine. Just become you again.